Okay, welcome to this presentation on managing project uncertainty and implementing risk management. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the PMI-RMP certification. My name is Susan Parente. I'm an instructor with PMO Advisory, and I've been an instructor for a number of years now, teaching RMP certification classes and also Agile classes. And I'm excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And let me just do a quick time check. I will give everybody one more minute. In the meantime, if you have not used Zoom before, which I think there are very few people who have not used Zoom before, but just make sure you keep yourself on mute. You can use the chat box if you have a question. And I'm very mindful of questions in the chat while I'm presenting. So I do have the chat box up. So if you have a question pertinent to the slide, I will try to answer it right then. There'll also be some time at the end for questions if you have questions at the end. So whichever works best for you. And if you just keep yourself on mute, that would be great. Generally, the webinar will last about 50 minutes with 10 minutes for questions. And just a note that PMO Advisory is able to offer one PDU for attendance, and we'll be providing instructions on how to claim the PDU at the end of this presentation. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I will go back on video later, but I just like to put that aside so in case there's any bandwidth issues, but I still have the chat box up. So this presentation is on managing project uncertainty and implementing risk management. And I'm very excited to provide you with this presentation. What we're going to talk about is what project risk management is. Why aren't we doing risk management? So I think there are a lot of clients of mine who know they should be doing it, but aren't doing it quite right. So I'm going to talk about barriers, and more barriers, and then tools for busting those barriers, and then a plan for implementing risk management and a summary. So here's a little bit about myself. I always look at these and wonder if it's up to date or not. So I have a number of certifications, as you can see on the left. I have certifications in risk management through a number of certifying bodies, certifications in Agile through a number of certifying bodies, and then, of course, project management. And I'm currently working on my Pgmt through PMO Advisory. So if you're interested in that, you can certainly ping me about that, and I'd be happy to get you to the right person. And I will put my email address is actually on the last slide, so you'll have it there. But I'll go ahead and type it in the chat box now also. So this also goes for any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. If you forget to ask a question, have some follow-up question for me, you can use that email address from me. So anyway, I have a number of certifications. I've been teaching certification classes for many, many years. And prior to that, I was giving people guidance on getting certifications. And so that's where I'm at. A little bit about PMO Advisory. PMO Advisory is a Project Management Institute authorized training partner, as I said. And we actually are one of the few firms that provide training in Agile project management, traditional project management, program management, portfolio management, risk management, and project management office, so PMO training. Our specialization at PMO Advisory is strategic implementation, and we bring together professionals associated with business execution. And this includes, but not limited to, portfolio, program, project, and risk management. So you see how risk management ties into all this. PMO Advisory is an aspiring B Corp. Our social mission is helping students and professionals with improving their careers through training, certification, and hands-on experience. I've been doing training for many, many years. I'm a proud instructor here at PMO Advisory, and I love our mission. I love teaching people, and I love helping people to further their career and just assist them with other professional aspects of their life. Thank you so much. So just a little foundation, getting into this presentation on risk management, on implementing risk management. So as project managers, we've heard of risk management. Question is, how much are we actually doing, right? So many of my clients, many of my customers, many of my colleagues create a risk register, have their list of risks, and when it comes to actually doing risk management, managing those risks that they've identified, there's a little bit less of that happens, okay? So if we know what risk management is and why it's valuable, why aren't we doing more of it? So my presentation here is going to help us to look at the hurdles of implementing risk management and provide you with tools and techniques to bust the barriers that I'm going to talk about to implementing risk management in your organization and on your projects. Okay, so I always like to start by defining risk. That may seem kind of remedial for this presentation since we're talking about implementing risk management. But to be honest with you, a lot of times people have misconceptions about risks. So anytime I do even a workshop on identifying risk, I always start with a slide like this. So a risk is not necessarily a bad thing. One of my colleagues said that risk is a 4-letter word. It's a bad word, and it really shouldn't be. All a risk is an uncertain event or condition, and that if that event or condition occurs is going to have either positive or negative effect on at least one project objective. So a risk can be positive or negative. Positive risks are called opportunity risks, and when they occur, they result in benefits to the project. Negative risks are called threat risks, and when they occur, they present issues or problems for the project. When we look at a risk, we want to look at it in 2 aspects, both probability and impact. And then we want to determine the risk exposure or risk score based on both probability and impact. This is one thing that I see is often missing, is that people focus on either probability or impact, but not both. We really want to consider both. Probability is a likelihood of occurrence that an objective will not be met using the current plan. That would be for a threat risk, or an objective would be met would be for an opportunity risk. And then our impact is the consequence, which can be negative or positive, of the risk event occurring. And for negative risks, it would be the penalty incurred if the objective is not obtained. So let's make sure we take a note to distinguish a risk versus an issue. So a risk is an event that may occur in the future, so it has not yet occurred, whereas a problem or issue is something that has occurred and we're dealing with right now. This is a big pitfall that I find often. People call things that are issues risks. I've seen people put issues in risk logs. So we want to be very careful about that. So if that's what a risk is, what is risk management? Well, risk management is an organized, systematic decision-making process that efficiently plans, assesses, handles, monitors / controls, and documents risks. And so this is really speaking to all of the processes in risk management as per the PMBOK guide. And the goal of risk management is to increase the likelihood of achieving project goals and decrease the likelihood that a risk would become a future problem. So we want to increase our opportunity risk and decrease our threat risk. So project risk management has us look at uncertainty in our projects. What are our project unknowns? What are our known unknowns? Those are risks that we've identified. Our unknown unknowns are risks that we have not identified. One of the reasons that we want to continuously identify risks throughout the project, not just at the beginning of the project, is because there could be unknowns that are not yet identified that emerge later. They call them emergent risks. They emerge later in the project. So we want to continue to do risk identification, the process of identify risks throughout the project, not just at the beginning. And we do that because we want to identify as many unknowns or risks as possible. Risk management allows us a capability to quickly and effectively communicate risk information up and down the management chain. So some uncertainty questions we want to ask ourselves is, what can go wrong? What is the likelihood of it? What is the consequence of it going wrong? And what can we do to avoid it? So that would be for threat risk. For opportunity risk, what could be a benefit out of this project? What is the likelihood of it? What are the consequences of that benefit occurring? And what can we do to encourage the benefit? So we can look at that both ways. So why are we doing risk management, right? So this is a really good question, because this answer to this question is going to sort of unveil some of our barriers. Okay, so are we doing risk management because we're supposed to? So many of my clients are federal clients, and they are required to do risk management. They're required to have a risk register as part of congressional mandates for IT projects. So that is actually why many of my clients do risk management, is because they're supposed to. You may be doing it because the PMBOK guide told us to. So I said the PMBOK here, really referred to as a PMBOK guide, but because my PMBOK guide told me to do risk management may not be the most sticky reason to do project risk management. Our boss told us to, you know, maybe another reason to encourage you, but I think it still needs to come from you. The woman presenting told us to, that would be me. So these are all some reasons, and what I say to that is just do it. And hopefully from this presentation, you'll get a sense of why it's so important to do risk management, and you'll be convinced of that. And if you're convinced of that, then these other motivations will not be what's driving it. So let's think about this. So what are some great motivations? Well, if we could know about the future now, how might that benefit us? So I always think of like Johnny Carson, the great Cognac, with the, remember he wore the thing on his head, and he had like a crystal ball, and he would give an answer and then open an envelope and have the question. So it kind of cracked me up. So if we could foretell the future, how would that be beneficial to us for our project management? Certainly we'd be great project managers if we knew what could happen in the future. We also want to keep the project constraints in balance, scope, cost, time, and even quality. So that's our triple constraint, right? So in order to keep these in balance for our triple constraint, we want to use risk management. So basically, uncertainty is what exists all around our triple constraint of time, cost, and scope. And don't forget, quality is always kind of dead smack in the middle here, which is customer service. Right? I think of this as the juggling act. I'm not the only person that's used that expression. If you actually YouTube me, you will, I believe, find a video of me juggling at one of my presentations. A little more difficult to do virtually, but I have to figure out how to do that, set up the camera so I could do some juggling. So I was juggling scope, time, and cost, which, by the way, you probably juggle on a regular basis for the projects that you're working on. What allows us to juggle time, cost, and scope is our ability to manage this uncertainty around these project constraints. So why else are we doing project risk management? Well, we're learning what we don't know, or what I don't know, and what I don't know, and what I know and what I don't know. Is this kind of written wrong? So what you know that you don't know, and what you don't know that you don't know. So those would be our known unknowns and our unknown unknowns. So a little bit of a tongue twister there. So our known unknowns and our unknown unknowns. Wrap your head around that one. Okay, so by doing risk management, we're dealing with reality. We're dealing with the reality that things will go wrong. A lot of times people want to ignore this as if the project's going to be more successful if they ignore the uncertainty that's in the project, and it certainly will not be. Lastly, we want to plan for potential problems or successes. So for all projects, we want to identify potential problems. We want to efficiently manage our project resources. We want to reduce threats and increase opportunities, as I said before. We also want to have structured and systematic review of our project. Another thing that's valuable about risk management, it allows us to make effective decisions and also escalate and communicate when decisions are needed by senior management or by your customer for a particular project. We can use risk management to communicate that. We can assess the impact of changes using risk management, and we can also make these project decisions as needed throughout the project. Risk management is also a process for system improvements and for project communication. It helps facilitate both of those. So what stops us from doing risk management if it's such a great idea? Well, oftentimes we don't have any buy-in from others, particularly our boss, our project sponsor, our company, other project stakeholders. We often are lacking time, money, requirements, or a plan. So hopefully I'll help you with some of that. So what I boiled this down to is what I call the 4 Ps of project risk management. First, we have the pain. And somebody actually in one of my presentations, when I started talking about the 4 Ps, shared with me, well, what about the possibility? Because this could be opportunity risk, right? So for threat risk, we want to focus on the pain, because when we feel the pain and the pain point, this drives us to want to make a change. We know from a change management perspective that when we feel pain, that's when we want to make changes. And also there's a possibility, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that possibility that we can obtain through management of opportunity risks. So you want to ask yourself, what is the pain in my organization or in my project? What is the pain that we have? You know, the inclination is, why should I do something? Why should I change something if I'm not solving a problem? I'm not going to make any difference. So the pain point is going to help us drive change. And this is also where we can calculate potential financial loss. Potential financial loss oftentimes drives change. So now on the positive side, what is the possibility that the organization or project has? What could be the benefit of implementing risk management? Why should we do something if there's no benefit? Well, the potential benefits of driving change, or the potential revenue can also drive change. Okay, so we want to look at those things. So that's our pain and possibility. Our next P is called the plan. Gotta have a plan. Project management, we're all about planning. So we want to establish the process for managing project risk. We want to develop a risk management plan. Later on in a few slides, I'm going to share with you some things that would be valuable to include in your risk management plan. And by the way, don't just develop that plan, actually use it. You'd be surprised how many of my customers do not use the risk management plan that they created, or they create a risk register and put it aside and move on with the project, and then wonder why later all the risks they identified became issues. So you don't want to be in that place. You also want to generate a culture of risk management. And I always say it starts with me. So one of my clients is a Census Bureau. And when I was working there, I was on the program management office for a very large program, and I was in charge of risk management. And in that role, I would, walk down the hall, and people knew me. I was all about risk management. I talked to them about risk management. Risk management was what I did, who I was, and people would literally see me and say, "That reminds me, I've got to update my risk register," like project managers or other government people that I would work with. And so we created this culture of risk management such that you know, people were constantly thinking about risk management. How do I manage risks on my project, on my program? And that culture helped us to get to another level of risk management, which is really great. And then we want to update the plan for each new project. So we want to gain our lessons learned from the project and then update our risk management plan accordingly. So here's a brief overview of the risk management process. And if you received a business card from me, if I gave you my business card, you would see on the back of my business card this actual process. I like it. It's simple. It's got 5 steps: identify, assess, plan responses, execute, and then all the while we're planning, monitoring, documenting, communicating. Now, if you map this to the PMBOK guide, they have a process called implement risk response. And actually, when I had first created this process myself to use, the PMBOK guide did not have any execution of planning of the planned responses. Well, what they found is that people would plan responses, they put them on the risk register, and they wouldn't actually execute them. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we would have that same problem where you have identified threat risks that become issues because nothing was done to reduce them. So we want to make sure we reduce or eliminate our threat risks accordingly and actually take that action. So plan for risk management. Well, we want to develop a risk management plan. This is a critical piece. When we develop our risk management plan, it details each of the processes of risk management in that plan. It basically says how we're going to do risk management for the project and what tools and techniques of each of these processes that we're going to use. Our risk management plan should define risk, just like I did at the start of this presentation. It should also define your risk tolerance. And when I say yours, I mean the project's risk tolerance. So this should be based on the risk tolerance of the project sponsor or key stakeholders. It should detail your project or organization's risk policy, and it should establish your risk management processes, which, as I said, includes detailing the tools and techniques that you're going to use for each risk management process. You should also define roles, not roles for the whole project or roles for the organization, but roles associated with risk management for your project. And that does not mean the project manager does everything. I've seen way too many risk registers where the project manager owns every risk. Good luck with that, because you're very busy as a project manager, so that's probably not going to work well. And then you want to plan process implementation. So that's another key part of that. So how are you actually going to implement these processes? Are you going to have workshops to identify risks? Are you going to update or assess risks as part of meetings? When are you going to do these things? So you want to plan that. And you also want to baseline risk. So if there's particular high-level risks for the project, you may want to baseline those here. And you want to develop risk documentation and templates. So for example, the template risk register that you're going to use for your project can be developed and documented here. However, you don't want to actually store your risks in the risk management plan. You could baseline them, but you don't want to store and update all of your project risks here because it'll be changing daily as you go throughout the project, at least weekly, even if you don't change them daily. So you want to update that in the risk register, which is a project document that resides outside of your risk management plan. Okay, so next are 4 Ps. Our next one is participation. So I don't know how the guy in the suit got up to that tree limb there, but he looks like he's doing something. So I think that's a participation there. So participation starts with communication. So it's very important to be in communication around risk management, what you're doing in the project, communicate with your customer. You want to shift the culture in your organization or even on your project. There's a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, and if you don't follow him, I highly recommend you follow him. You can actually follow him on LinkedIn. I went on to LinkedIn today to look at profile for somebody who my organization was looking at well, not my organization, one of my contract organizations was looking to hire this person. And so I went on to LinkedIn, and there was Simon Sinek with a post, and he was actually talking about hiring, which is very, very funny. Anyway, if you follow Simon Sinek, you'll get those posts. But if you're interested in shifting your culture, I highly recommend a TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and it's called Start With Why. And he has a book, it's actually called Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And if you have time to read that book, that's an excellent read. If you don't have time, go ahead and watch the 20-minute TED Talk. What he says is that we often in our organizations start by telling people how to do things and not why, or we tell them the why. So we'll hand them a risk register template and we'll say, fill this out with risks, but then they don't get into the why. So the why is very important for people to understand, because it focuses on purpose, cause, and belief. And so shifting that culture, can convincing people or getting people on board for why we're doing risk management is going to do so much more for your project than just telling them use this template and identify risks. So the why is that if we reduce our threat risk, we'll have less issues in the project. If we increase our opportunity risk, we'll have more benefits. How do we manage a project well? How do we manage a project successfully? We do so by managing our risks. I'm a firm believer of that, and I've successfully led many projects, even in environments where nobody else successfully led projects, meaning every project was not on time, failed to achieve objectives, usually on time, not on time, over budget, and not delivering on scope were the challenges that I faced. But in every organization I've been a part of, I've always been able to achieve those objectives. And I think that risk management is the way I've done that. We don't want to forget that training is a key part of risk management. And we want to train people on the how, the process, and the what. But we only want to do that once they're bought into the why and understanding why we're doing risk management. So those are all important for us to get people on board with risk management and get them to participate, which is why participation is one of our P's. I recommend starting small. So we want to do risk management on our projects, but we don't want to wait for sponsors or senior management to approve us doing this work. Instead, we want to just take it on ourselves. So what I tell people is any meeting where you talk about issues, you should be spending at least some time talking about risks, because our threat risks, we know if we don't manage them, they become project issues. So we definitely want to be proactive. That's what project management's about. And we want to create an environment of risk awareness within our teams. So we do this by generating leadership so that risk management occurs when you're not there. So guess what? When I'm not there, my team is still thinking about risk. Why is that? Because they're bought into the why of risk management. They don't need me to prod them to think about risk management. They already know they should be thinking about it, and they already have the tools in place to do so. And we want to make it safe. So to bring up risks and reward people for doing so is really important, creating that safe place for people to bring up risks. So if somebody comes to me with a potential risk and I get upset or angry or something like that, then they're not going to feel safe to come to me with risk. So even if it's really bad news, inside I might be going, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. On the outside, I'm like, this is great. And the part that this is great is because I'm rather have people bring up risks to me on a regular basis than bring up issues. That's about being proactive. And I always award people for being proactive because it's best for everybody in the organization. So remember that any and all personnel in the project are responsible for identifying risks. It should really be an everyday part of their job. So when we identify risks, it's not necessary to resolve them at that point, at that risk identification point. We simply want to capture the potential problem. So some methods we can use to identify risks include brainstorming, which is probably the most common, widely used, checklists. So the checklist could be a list of questions that prompt us to look at areas in our project where risk may be. Doing a cost or schedule analysis or functional or failure analysis. I'm very familiar with that, given my engineering background. We're always looking at how things would break, and we would want to know how and when things would break so we could design them so they would not break. That was proactive design. Excuse me. And then lastly, interviewing subject matter experts. So it's a good idea to have risk identification as part of every project status meeting. And at minimum, it should be a part of each project milestone evaluation. Some different risk types that we might identify include technical risks, cost risks, schedule risks, and IT security risks. Our participation through risk identification certainly includes proper risk statements. So we want to make sure our risk statements are in a structured manner so that we provide both the condition and the consequence. The condition giving us that probability or likelihood, and the consequence giving us the impact of that risk event occurring. So I recommend the format of stating the risk in terms of if-then statements, or you can also say if-then resulting in, if that helps you further with that. So our if part of our statement, our conditional, is a short, succinct statement that describes the background information or description of the problem. So this details our risk probability. The then part of this statement details our risk impact. And this talks about possible outcomes of the current conditions should this risk event occur. So consequences should be directly traceable to the event. For example, if I have a flat tire when commuting to work, then I may not get to work on time. You want to practice writing risk statements with your project team so that they can develop the skills to do that, and also with stakeholders, and certainly include anyone and everyone that wants to be involved with risk management in identifying these risks for your project. And then last, we have the proof. I have a little girl, she's at the top of the mountain there, and they say, you know, that the proof is in the pudding. Actually I had pudding after my lunch today, so it's a risk management pudding proof kind of day. So we want to demonstrate the return on investment. This is going to help to further implement risk management in other parts of the organization. Hopefully people will look at your project and say, wow, Jane or Bob is very lucky. They're a really lucky project manager. And I like to say, and one of my colleagues who's also a risk management SME says, there's no luck in project management, just really good planning and implementing risk management. So there's not such thing as a lucky project manager. If you know a project manager who's lucky, they're probably doing risk management. They're following the processes and best practices of risk management. And our best proof for risk management being valuable and getting other people to do it is having our projects be on time, within budget, within scope, and delivering on customer satisfaction. So that's the quality aspect. So each of these relates. We've got our on time, right? We've got our within budget, we've got our within scope, and we've got our customer satisfaction. And all of this helps us we're helped to do all of those things by identifying and managing our risk. So that's a circle around there. Okay, so in summary, our 4 P's of project risk management: you want to start with the pain or the possibility, we want to use the plan, and we want to generate participation, particularly around that risk identification that needs to be done well, so all the other aspects of risk management can be done well. And then we want to demonstrate the proof. And I always like to say, if you haven't identified your risks, you're already taking them. So that's not good. You probably want to identify, at least know the risks you're taking, right? And in summary, risk management is an organized, systematic decision-making process that efficiently plans, assesses, handles, monitors / controls, and documents risk with the purpose of increasing the likelihood of achieving project goals and decreasing the likelihood that a risk will become a future problem. We want to bust the barriers of risk management by using the 4 Ps of project risk management: the pain, the plan, participation, and proof. Okay, and all of this is going to help us to improve implementation of risk management on our projects. We want to create a culture of risk awareness, and that risk awareness starts with me. And I will complete this section with a quote. Everyone wants to be doing risk management. Everyone thinks everybody else is doing it. Not many people are actually doing it, and no one is doing it particularly well. So don't be so hard on yourself if that's where you see that you are at. So with that, I want to share a few things with you, and then I want to talk about risk management, the RMP certification. So for any of you who are interested. So here's some upcoming events that PMO Advisory has. We have an ACP course next month. I'm actually teaching that course. And our next RMP course is in November. And we also have a portfolio management certification course, a program management certification course, and PMP courses coming up. So those are important to note. And if you have any questions about any of those, you can certainly let me know. Oh, this is about our, this should say risk-related training here, so ignore that part. So our risk management training, the session that we have coming up, our session coming up is actually going to be this IntelliCamp format, which is it is 21 PDUs, but we do 3 sessions, 4 hours each. So that gives you 12 hours, but then we have an online aspect that you can do on your own time. So together that gives you your 21 hours. So it's really a great way. A lot of people appreciate this because you're able to get your 21 hours doing some in your own time and then doing some. I believe our class coming up is in the evening, which works out really well for people. You don't have to take time off of work. It's 1 evening each week for 3 weeks, and it gives you some time to absorb the information, which is really quite valuable. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about that, and then I'll take questions at the end. So I put these slides at the end because I'm only gonna go over them lightly, and then I'll have plenty of time for questions. So the risk management certification from PMI is called Risk Management Professional, or the PMI-RMP. This credential is there to fulfill the need for a specialized role in project risk management. That being said, I know many project managers who just wanted to get this certification so they could be more effective as a project manager and better able to deliver on project needs. The PMI-RMP recognizes your unique expertise and competency in assessing and identifying project risks, mitigating threats, and capitalizing on opportunities while still possessing a baseline knowledge and practical application in all areas of project management. So why would you want to get your PMI-RMP certification? Well, it highlights a subject matter expertise and experience in project risk management. I know many, many, many people that have their PMP certification, but they don't have any other certification. So this kind of helps to distinguish you. And again, as I said, if you want to be a successful project manager, start doing risk management, incorporating that. And if you're doing so already, hone your skills, sharpen your saw, and get to look at risk management in perhaps a different way and practice doing some of the risk management specific processes that can help improve your project performance. It also increases marketability that you have to existing and potential clients or employers. As I said, it's a differentiator. It also demonstrates your commitment to professional development and ongoing education. And you can use the PDUs that you obtain by getting your PMP certification to maintain your PMP credential. I also oftentimes have people who take the PMI-RMP certification class don't plan to get the certification, but are just taking the class to learn the material and get the PDUs, which is great. And I will say a lot of times people who take the class then end up deciding to go and get the certification because they realize that it has value to it. So either way, there's definitely a lot to be had there. So the application process takes 3 to 5 days. Some of them are audit. The exam itself is 3.5 hours. It's much easier than the PMP exam. It's in a smaller topic, but it goes a lot deeper in risk management from what's on the PMP. And your experience may overlap with your PMP application, which is really great. If you don't have a PMP certification, you can still go for your PMI-RMP certification. There is a credential handbook online that's free on PMI.org. And there's also an exam specification that's free for PMI members. So it's called the Exam Content Outline, and you can download that, and that can help you learn a little bit more about it. So this certification has covers these domains listed here: risk strategy and planning, stakeholder engagement, risk process facilitation, monitoring, reporting, and performing specialized risk analysis. And you can see how that's distributed, with most of it being on project process facilitation, but kind of evenly distributed across the other areas. And these are 2 other areas in addition. So risk strategy and planning and stakeholder engagement. These are just blow-ups of those specific areas. So I want to go back to here, questions. So if you have any questions, post them in the chat. And in the meantime, you can maybe take a picture or screen capture of this on how to claim your 1 PDU for this webinar. So I thank you for joining me today. Does anybody have any questions? You can either take yourself off mute, you can raise your hand if you like, or you can type in the chat. And hopefully everybody's captured this. If you want the slides, please let me know. I can send you a PDF of the slides, and this is the email address where you can reach me. Again, I'll type in the chat box so you can copy and paste it if you need to. That's parente@pmoadvisory.com. So please feel free to reach out to me. Does anybody have any questions about risk management, implementing risk management, or about this certification? Got myself back on video now. Any questions? Not seeing any questions in the chat box. All right, I'll just give you a moment. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Thank you for taking your time, sort of post-lunch time. I didn't have lunch at noon. I took my lunchtime at 1 to present to you today. So thank you for taking your time. I greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody is having a good week. Good start to September. And I guess with that, I'll close out. And if you think of any questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for your time today, and I hope to see you in one of my classes. I actually teach an Agile class this year, as you saw coming up, and a risk management class. So if you're interested in either, please let me know. I also have a lot of Agile certifications, and I can tell you why the PMI-CP is my favorite. So you can go send me an email. And thank you. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day. And if you come up with any questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful day.